Single mom receives surprising call, CEO exposes, "Is this ultrasound truly your miracle?" Jessica could hardly shake the live-in anxiety of balancing her job at the clinic and caring for Ava and Max. Their laughter often overshadowed the ever-present worry about how she would pay the next bill, and the thought of how long she could keep this all up exhausted her. Then, on a Tuesday that smelled of freshly baked pies from Mrs. Dolan's bakery, she received a call, its ring slicing through the hum of her normal routine. The number was unfamiliar, but curiosity flipped her heart in her chest. "Hello?" The voice on the other end was deep and confident, commanding. It was the CEO of a biotech company. He began enthusiastically discussing an ultrasound invention that her former intern, Kevin Yu, created. A lump formed in Jessica's throat as she listened. Was she being asked to rejoice in someone else's success? Paralyzed, she felt a burgeoning sense of inadequacy course through her, fighting against the pride she should have felt. Had she simply shaped Kevin's path, a mere stepping stone to his brilliance? As the conversation turned, his tone dipped, questioning her worthiness, a nonsensical weight pressing down on her heart. "We'll be naming this device after you if we move forward, if you think you're ready for the responsibility." Ridiculous. The implication was suffocating. With Max needing care that stretched her wallet thin, she'd never felt less capable. Shouldn't she have accomplished more? Was Kevin's success a reflection of her shortcomings? Discomfort settled deep in her stomach as she folded the laundry. The scent of lavender drifted from the dryer, but it felt more like a reminder, a taunt of her reality. Before the doubts could chain her, a fever broke through Max's small body the next day, a nagging cough growing heavier in her heart. The clinic rushed him in, and suddenly she was drowning once more in a deluge of financial dread. Medical bills piled high, each one a reminder of both the financial strain and the glimpse of failure looming ever closer. Her days felt like chaotic juggling acts, balancing her love for her children against unyielding responsibilities. And here she was questioning the very system she wished to improve by pouring her life into it. It was all so unjust. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jessica was stuck in a limbo of protest and resignation as she stared at bills climbing higher each week while fighting against a system that cared more about profit than care. Acceptance seemed like betrayal, a treacherous path she didn't want to wander down, especially for her kids. But how many more battles must she fend off before finding consequences she could live with? Just as her sense of agency began to bubble, a devastating twist pulled her in deeper. Kevin Yu's invention was not merely a literary footnote, but a potential lifeline entwined in their hardship, a conundrum of privilege and deserving. Each confrontation with the corporate entity now felt more personal, unraveling the threads of her already fraying resolve. The CEO's condescending voice echoed in her mind, but was she ready to fight? Her heart raced with uncertainty as she stood precariously at a crossroads. Would her fears swallow her whole, or would they serve as fuel for her voice? The answer eluded her, a choice that held her future and her children's just out of reach, teetering dangerously on the precipice of transformation. As Jessica sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the stack of hospital bills, the warmth of the afternoon sun slipped through the window, bathing the room in a golden hue. Yet, the light offered little comfort. Each envelope stood like a looming specter of her inadequacies, as if to say that not only were her efforts in vain but that she was being judged unworthy of success. She clenched her fists, feeling the smooth edges of the papers dig into her palm. This wasn't merely about failure, it was about their survival. Max's cough echoed in the background, a reminder of the vulnerability that had crept into their lives. She glanced toward the nursery where Ava played with blocks, the little girl's laughter ringing pure and innocent. In stark contrast, a deep knot tightened in her stomach. Financial strain had morphed from an abstract worry into a daily specter haunting every decision. Yet today felt different. Clarity seeped into her mind like sunlight through dark clouds. The CEO's condescending tone from the phone call had stirred something within her, a fusing of will and grit. "If you think you're ready for the responsibility." The words lingered in the air, an invitation cloaked in condescension. Responsibility was a familiar mantle, wasn't he it? She was a mother bearing the weight of 2 children and their futures on her slender shoulders. She had always been ready to take on the challenges of motherhood and work. Perhaps this was just the next iteration of that. Jessica rose from the bed, energy igniting within her. The first step was to confront her doubts, face them head-on rather than allow them to suffocate her aspirations. Her fingers danced across her phone, tapping Kevin's name into the search bar. Instantly, ideas tumbled through her mind like a cascade of silver lining. Why not connect with him again? They had once worked together, his design had emerged in part through her guidance. She pulled up his contact details, each tap requiring not just action, but a concerted leap of faith. What if he didn't want to hear from her? What if he dismissed her concerns? Each thought rolled through her like a wave, but she stifled the anxiety with sheer determination. Wrapping her fingers around the phone, she took a deep breath and hit dial. "Kevin?" His surprised voice brightened her mood even amid the uncertainty. "Wow, Jessica. Long time no see. What's up? Can we meet?" she asked, her heart racing. "I want to talk about your ultrasound project." As they finalized a time to meet, a surge of adrenaline propelled her forward. This was indeed a leap into the unknown, but one guided by purpose. She had spent years accommodating others' successes. Wasn't it time to carve out her own path? Jessica's mind swirled with thoughts of possibility. It wasn't merely about claiming credit for Kevin's invention or her mentorship. It was about claiming a role in shaping that success, standing atop the battles she had faced so far. Her resolve solidified with each passing moment. Perhaps the fear of failure was merely a mask for her desire to grow, to reclaim her narrative. As night fell, shadows crept into the corners of her home, but they felt different now, as if they were wrapping around her with a softer embrace, guiding her toward newfound determination. The next morning, Jessica woke not to dread but to purpose. Revisiting her role as an advocate both for herself and her children seemed no longer an overwhelming task. Instead, it became an opportunity for growth, a chance to prove to herself that she was more than just a caretaker, she was a catalyst for change. When the moment of their meeting finally arrived, she took a deep breath outside the cafe, feeling the vibrancy of the world around her. The atmosphere buzzed with potential, and for the first time in months, Jessica felt the electricity of excitement spark within. Just as she was about to walk in, she caught sight of a familiar face approaching. It was the CEO. Their eyes locked, and for a brief moment, the world around her dimmed. A surge of fierceness welled up inside her. The time had come to face him and the uncertainty head-on. Jessica's heart raced as she stood on the cusp of confrontation. The CEO's expression flickered with recognition. He had once towered over her in meetings, casting a long shadow during her years at the firm. Now, however, the power dynamics felt shifted, and she instinctively squared her shoulders, welcoming the unease that buzzed beneath her surface. "Jessica, is that you? I didn't expect to see you here," he said, his tone smirking with a mixture of surprise and condescension. "Hi, Carter." She forced a smile, feeling the fierce resolve tighten her stomach. "I'm actually here to meet someone." He stepped closer, unfurling an imposing presence as memories of past encounters surged back. She recalled countless moments where his dismissive nods had chipped away at her confidence. But today, she wouldn't be that same hesitant employee. "I see. Is there something you need?" Jessica challenged, her voice steadier than she felt. With each word, she drew strength from the vision of her children, their faces urging her forward. Just curious about your involvement with the ultrasound project, he replied, scanning her like she was merely a pawn on his chessboard. I assume you're still not quite ready for such responsibility? The weight of his insinuation wrapped around her throat, but rather than falter, a sharp spark ignited within her. She remembered the days, late at night, burning the midnight oil concerning ultrasound designs with Kevin. She had matter-of-factly contributed ideas, critiques, even encouragement. A vision formed in her mind, a future sculpted not only by others' designs but also by her own imprint. I'm actually here to discuss how we might collaborate, Jessica said, a new conviction icing the edges of her words. This project isn't just about the technology. It involves me, Kevin, and our vision for the future of maternal care. Carter raised an eyebrow, intrigued but dismissive. Is that what you think? That you can step into this arena without support? You know how competitive it is. I know exactly how competitive it is, she countered, her passion spilling forth. But that's why I'm here. To reclaim my role, to take, yes, responsibility for my ideas and change the narrative. It may surprise you, but I'm not that scared girl anymore. Sensing her determination, he leaned against the cafe entrance, arms crossed, a subtle challenge glinting in his eyes. Bold words. But how do you plan to prove yourself? Jessica needed to formulate her next moves carefully, not solely for his approval but for her own sense of purpose. By showing you what I bring to the table, she responded, steadying her gaze. I've studied the market. I have ideas that can not only enhance this project but deliver it to families like mine, who rely on these advancements. I will propel this forward on my terms. She could see him weighing her words, the shadows of doubt flickering across his face. The momentum had begun to shift, and for the first time, she could see the scales of power tilting back in her favor. All right, Jessica, he said, a hint of respect creeping into his tone. Let's discuss this, but be prepared. You'll need to come with something solid. Consider it done, she replied, buoyed by the prospect that this meeting could ignite the change she yearned for. As she walked into the cafe, she felt the sting of victory tinged with challenge. This was merely the first step, a momentary gain in a broader campaign to redefine her career. Her heart was pounding with aspiration, but the journey ahead loomed larger than she anticipated. From the corner of her eye, she caught Kevin waving from a table inside, and she felt her focus narrowing. Meeting him was imperative. She needed to harness not only his expertise but also his willingness to align their visions. Forging this partnership could transform their concepts into a new reality, one where she wouldn't just be a participant but a driving force. Yet she couldn't shake the echoes of Carter's condescension. Doubts flitted through her mind. Was she truly ready to take control? Could she genuinely transform her dreams into reality? The stakes felt higher than ever as she mentally prepared to collaborate and strategize with Kevin. As they settled into the cafe's cozy corner, the conversation shifted from pleasantries to the heart of the project. Each minute decision, each idea exchanged here would determine her path forward. But still, uncertainty lingered at the periphery of her mind like a ghost, a reminder that the world of business was fraught with volatility. This was only the beginning. Just as they began to sketch out the structure of their proposal, the reality of their plans collided with a harsh truth. Jessica realized they would have to face Carter again, and she would need to ensure he saw her not as a former subordinate, but as a peer to be reckoned with. With every ounce of courage she could gather, Jessica braced herself for the battle ahead, where the stakes were personal success and the future of her family intertwined. With that thought pulsing through her, she sensed a tidal wave of transformation on the horizon. Then a notification popped up on her phone, a message from Carter. Looking forward to seeing what you've got, Jessica. Don't disappoint me. The challenge was set, and she knew this wasn't just about the project anymore. It was about her reclaiming her narrative, her identity, her future. But could she truly live up to the potential the moment promised? As the words flashed before her, a challenging resolve gripped her heart. She clenched her fists again, not in anger but determination. The time for doubt had passed. With what was at stake looming ahead, her next move would define everything. As Jessica settled into her seat across from Kevin, an electric energy coursed through her. The anticipation of their brainstorming moment crackled in the air as she sought to channel that energy into actionable ideas. She could no longer afford to dwell on past insecurities. Her focus shifted entirely towards the future she was determined to carve out. Kevin leaned forward, an eager glint in his eyes. "I've been looking over the data you sent me. The insights you gathered on user experience are incredible. We can build on that." His enthusiasm was infectious, and for a moment, Jessica felt that familiar buoyancy of potential gather momentum within her. It validated her choice to step into this territory, a leap she had hesitated to take just weeks ago. "Thanks, Kevin. I see several angles where we can innovate," she responded, her mind racing with possibilities for their ultrasound project. Janet's need for efficient, compassionate care weighed heavily on her heart, providing her a profound motivation to drive this initiative. However, the euphoria of innovation was quickly tempered by the looming specter of Carter. His words echoed in her mind like a taunting reminder of her vulnerability. Was she truly prepared to bring her concepts to fruition, face scrutiny, and prove her worth? "Jessica?" Kevin's voice snapped her back. "You seem a bit lost there. What's on your mind?" The concern etched on his face sparked a moment of vulnerability that she hadn't planned on revealing. With a breath, she decided to share her apprehensions. "I keep thinking about Carter's reaction. I've already been defined by my past failures, and now with him watching, it feels like the stakes couldn't be higher." Kevin nodded sympathetically, recalling his own battles with self-doubt. "We all have that voice in our head. But remember, the journey forward isn't about them, it's about what we can create together. Carter's not the one with your vision. You are." She felt compelled to absorb Kevin's encouragement. This was about aligning their strengths to spark change. The room's atmosphere seemed less threatening and more like fertile ground as they began pooling their ideas. Hours passed as they lost themselves in brainstorming, outlining features, and discussing potential partnerships, each moment threaded with excitement. With every sketch and every concept, Jessica stored away every detail, mapping out her strategy, preparing for the moment she'd need to face Carter again. Yet, underneath the exhilaration lay a thread of unease. She was building a structure but lacking a solid foundation. It dawned on her that while they crafted innovative ideas, they were only half of the equation. They needed to enumerate their differentiators, explore the core motivations that would resonate with their target users, the families depending on their technology for love and care. "I think we need a personal story and narrative," she said suddenly, an instinct guiding her. "We shouldn't just be talking numbers and projections. We need a story that highlights why this is crucial, not just on a technical level but on a human level." "Exactly. We need to articulate how this will change lives," Kevin agreed, enthusiasm renewed. "Let us interview some parents, gather their stories. Real experiences will put a face on what we're doing." Jessica's heart quickened at the prospect. Not just a project anymore, it became a mission to reach out to families and convey their truths. This was about empowering parents like her, people who seek advancements not simply for the sake of technology, but for the potential it brought to their loved ones. As they drew closer to finalizing their proposal structure, Jessica felt the tension begin to morph into a productive energy. They weren't just reacting anymore, they were creators and innovators, articulating a vision grounded in empathy and connection. Just then, Kevin stood up suddenly, a thoughtful expression shaping his features. "We should create a mock-up to visually present. I can handle that, and in a way, it's action against our fears of Carter." Jessica admired Kevin's uncanny ability to push past doubt with proactive measures. Together, they would choke out the echoes of condescension, and Jessica would step forward as the architect of change. There was a tangible shift in her perception. With each decision to assert their identity and purpose, she moved further away from just being the reactionary character in Carter's narrative. But as they packed up, a new thought crept in the competitors also at the table, the shadows of potential failure looming with every creative effort they made. Their journey was only commencing, and challenges lay ahead, not only against Carter but against the stakes of the business world they were entering. Determined and invigorated, Jessica exited the cafe. She felt lighter, yet the gravity of responsibility swiftly settled in. This was only the beginning of transforming ambition into reality. She glanced at her phone, a new message lighting up the screen. "Hope you're ready for our initial meeting next week. Excited to see how well you perform under pressure, Carter." A shiver of dread rippled through her. This was not over. It was just the prelude. The moment had come to confront not only her past but her fear of failure, as she prepared to step into the arena. And in that moment, she knew, deep within her creative spirit, she had to face not just Carter, but her own sense of self-worth and redefine what that looked like. The battle of perceptions was set to unfold, edging her closer to the potential that she had glimpsed in the cafe. How far could she push herself once the real test began? In the days following her meeting with Kevin, Jessica immersed herself in preparing for the upcoming presentation. Each moment swelled with an urgency that had both its charms and its burdens. This was no longer about just ideas, this was about her identity, the stakes burgeoning with every calculated risk they took toward innovation. As she reviewed her notes late into the night, her mind began to clarify her priorities. It wasn't only about presenting facts or technology, it was about the families whose lives were impacted by her work. She could almost visualize Janet's face, teeming with hope, as she navigated her own challenges with a sick child, the digital ultrasound representing more than a tool, it was a lifeline. Yet the anxiety curled at the edges of her focus, whispering insidiously that she might fall short, that Carter's judgment would fulfill her worst fears. Those nagging thoughts morphed Jess into a duality, the determined innovator striving to find her voice and the self-doubting employee wishing to hide in the shadows. The next morning, she arrived at the office fueled by a new resolve. It was time to embrace her role fully rather than shrink back in fear of judgment. Flipping through her notes, she signaled to her team for a quick huddle. They gathered around, faces mixed with curiosity and trepidation. "I want us to brainstorm stories," she announced, her voice steady. "Interviews with families who can share their experiences. We need real words to ground our analysis. This isn't just about visuals or statistics. We're creating a service that could alter their lives." A murmur of agreement floated through the small group. She saw the spark ignite in their eyes, the character of the project was here, resting in each personal connection they could uncover. The meeting turned into a pulsating exchange, every team member energized by the prospect of anchoring their innovation in human stories instead of abstract data. As focus shifted to how they could approach the families, Jessica felt the burden lift, a realization that the strength of their ideas lay not solely in her hands but in the collective empathy and talent surrounding her. Later that afternoon, as she navigated through the office, a shadow emerged. Carter leaned against the wall, casually flipping through paperwork, but Jessica recognized the edge of his skepticism even before he spoke. "So, are you really banking on families' emotions for this pitch?" His tone dripped with condescension. She paused, irritation blooming within her. "Isn't that what healthcare is about, Carter? People's lives, emotions, and the real narratives behind why technology matters?" He raised an eyebrow, a disarming smirk creeping across his face. "Sounds risky, Jessica. You think an emotional appeal will divert attention from our competition's solid numbers?" Jessica squashed the impulse to recede into doubt. "Of course, solid data drives decisions, but you fail to see that human connection is a key driver in healthcare. We can provide more than a product, we can offer hope. Isn't that what our job truly means?" His smirk faltered for a brief moment, and she sensed a shift. Perhaps she had rattled the cage of his stern exterior. Ignoring the tense energy in the air, she stepped away, determined to put the encounter behind her. Carter's projections would not consume her identity any longer. She pushed forth and returned to her desk, her resolve strengthening. The competing pressures no longer defined her. Instead, she began to cultivate her voice. Days passed, steeped in interviews and storytelling, as they connected with families who shared heartfelt realities. Each session vibrated with raw emotion, their experiences became fuel for her developing pitch. Jessica was astonished by the wellspring of shared vulnerability. They forged something beyond data, they crafted a genuine narrative woven with hope and support. As her presentation day loomed, the air thickened with anticipation. She wanted to weave those stories into a tapestry showcasing the project's potential. This was more than a presentation. It was her moment to reclaim her worth, to confront Carter not just as a rival but as one of many who had ever underestimated her capabilities. As she concluded her preparation that evening, she received a group message: "Remember, personal connections matter. Let us make this pitch resonate." Kevin's words echoed in her mind. It was time to embrace her full potential. Jessica glanced around her workspace, dark and quiet, before opening her laptop for the final checks. She needed to envision herself speaking to not just Carter and the others, but also to the families whose lives her project sought to touch. Just as she began to finalize her notes, a knock interrupted her thoughts. Kevin stood at the door, a seriousness in his demeanor. "We need to talk. There's something you should know before the meeting." Curiosity mingled with apprehension, making her blood run cold. "What is it?" she asked, uncertain of what awaited her. And as Kevin stepped into the room, the air thickened with unspoken truths, the crackling tension pulling Jessica back into the uncertainties she thought she had left behind. Kevin leaned against the doorframe, eyes searching Jessica's expression for a flicker of understanding. The weight of his presence pressed in on her, the air electric with the unspoken revelation swirling between them. Jessica's heart raced, her mind churning with questions. This was not just a casual chat, and she sensed that the outcome might veer her from the path she had been painstakingly sculpting. He finally spoke, his voice low and measured. "I've been reviewing our competitors' recent shifts, and something caught my attention. They're launching a new ultrasound system that, well, it could alter the landscape of everything we're doing." Jessica felt the prickle of dread creep up her spine, mingling with her resolve. "What does that mean for us?" she inquired, her tone steadier than she felt. Kevin stepped further into the room, closing the door behind him. "We need to be sharp. This presentation isn't just about emotions and personal stories, it's also about demonstrating that we're 2 steps ahead of anyone out there. If we don't give them something compelling, something that showcases our innovation beyond the emotional angle, we could be overshadowed." A whirlwind of thoughts cascaded through her mind, pushing against the foundation of confidence she had begun to build. Was it possible that her plan, her narrative anchored in human experience, could falter against data and technological advancements? Doubt lapped at her resolve, but she pushed it aside. "We're not just anything, Kevin. Our approach offers a human insight that can't be quantified. That's what makes us unique." Kevin nodded, his expression conflicted. "I appreciate that, Jessica. But we need to tap harder into the technical aspects and address how our solution can be superior." The stakes were growing, and Jessica's pulse quickened. This was not just about a pitch but about honing her understanding of competing in a high-stakes atmosphere, elevating her narrative to engage not just emotions but also intellect. Success hinged on her ability to navigate both worlds. "What if we combine both?" she proposed carefully, formulating the strategy as she spoke. "Let us not just tell family stories, let us illustrate how our innovation translates into real-world benefits. If the technical aspects highlight why our technology can deliver better care, it enhances the emotional appeal." Kevin paused, visibly intrigued. "You mean a dual approach? Show them how our experiences with these families translate into data and results?" "Exactly," Jessica replied, feeling a surge of confidence break through the uncertainty. "We can quantify the impact. Let us showcase testimonials alongside performance metrics, draw direct lines between family needs and our technological edge. We need to show them the tangible benefits that can come from our connection to those stories. A flicker of approval crossed Kevin's face, and she could sense a shift in the atmosphere around them. They were building something critical here, a synergy between empathy and innovation. And hey, she added, a thought igniting as she pushed boundaries, we could even bring up one of our interviewees during the presentation. Someone who can speak to the difference our ultrasound could make in their life. It's personal, yet it proves our capability. Kevin leaned back slightly, the challenge in his brow relaxing. Now that's risky, but it could force the conversation to our advantage. The human voice can bridge the technical presentation, it's a game changer. No longer stifled by doubt, Jessica felt invigorated by the contest of ideas, her passion igniting like a flame. They exchanged thoughts rapidly, molding their plans into a coherent framework that not only showcased their technology but underscored the heart of why it mattered in the lives of each family they aimed to serve. As they rounded up their discussion, Jessica's mind raced, lengths ahead of where they had begun. Her focus sharpened, bolstered by the collision of ideas. She was not just participating, she was orchestrating. However, as they concluded, a realization struck her: Carter would undoubtedly seek an edge during the presentation. Would he challenge their higher-level strategies? Would he derail their emotional angle under the guise of rational strategy? Just as apprehension stole over her once again, Kevin laid a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We can do this, Jessica. Trust your gut, lead with your heart and smart data. Remember, you're not just fighting for this presentation, you're reshaping how we connect technology to humanity. And as she stood there, enveloped by the intensity of the moment, a renewed sense of purpose ignited within her. The time had come to face both the pressure of the pending presentation and challenge Carter's doubts head-on. No sooner than they finished their strategizing, another knock echoed against the door, tense and insistent. Kevin, you need to see this. Now. A team member called from the hallway. Jessica's heart pounded in her chest. They were mere moments away from entering a storm of ambition and competition, and she needed to prepare once more. What awaited them in that instant could redefine everything she'd been working for. As they stepped into the tumult of the office, Jessica prepared herself to confront events that could impact not only the pitch but her journey as a whole. Would she emerge victorious, or would she stumble under the weight of expectation? Where was her destiny leading her amidst this rising tide? The answers were just within reach, and as tension tightened, she could feel the electric charge of opportunity crackling in the air. Jessica stepped into the bustling office, where murmurs of strategies and ideas ricocheted off the walls like scattered darts. The atmosphere felt heavy with urgency, and for a moment, she stood still, absorbing the intensity that enveloped the room. The high-stakes nature of their mission suddenly felt palpable, a knot tightening in her stomach as the implications of their presentation weighed heavily on her shoulders. What is going on? Kevin's voice cut through her thoughts, pulling her back to the moment. A team member, Jordan, stood at the forefront, his eyes darting with a mixture of panic and excitement. The new ultrasound system is being discussed in a much bigger context. It's not just a simple launch, they're framing it as a groundbreaking innovation with potentially life-altering capabilities. We need to act fast. A wave of anxiety washed over Jessica. This wasn't just about competing products, it was about lives, families, and the trust they had built. How is that going to affect our upcoming presentation? She asked, fear tightening her throat. They're hyping this up in their marketing, drawing connections to improved outcomes and extraordinary testimonials from families using their tech, Jordan explained, urgency lacing his words. Jessica felt momentarily suffocated, caught between her ambitions and the shadows of doubt creeping in. Was their emotional narrative strong enough to hold up against such an onslaught? The thought unsettled her, echoing Kevin's earlier concerns. But she shook it off, reminding herself of the unique value their stories held. We can counter this, she resolved, her voice gathering strength. It's imperative that we elevate our narrative, make it undeniable. The team exchanged glances, her determination reigniting the hope that had been smoldering in the air. Jessica took a deep breath, centering herself. Let us focus on cases where our technology has truly changed lives. Can we compile data that shows measurable outcomes alongside those testimonials? Nods of agreement followed, and Kevin chimed in, we can gather quantified success stories that align with our emotional messaging. It's time to showcase how real people have positively impacted their futures because of what we provide. As the team rallied around her plan, Jessica felt an unexpected surge of confidence. The fiery doubt that had threatened to overwhelm her was now transformed into a flaring ambition. Let us assign roles, she declared, her voice steady and commanding. Jordan, work on gathering data from past clients, correlate satisfaction rates with the outcomes of their procedures. Kevin, connect with the families willing to share their stories. We'll need them to testify how our product made a significant difference. They scattered to their assigned tasks, and the office filled with the sound of rustling papers and hurried typing. Jessica sat at her desk, focused on the details of the presentation. Her heart raced, not out of fear, but from the pulse of purpose that coursed through her veins. Yet, as she drafted the outline, an unsettling thought crept back into her mind. What if Carter's strategy involved turning their emotional narrative against them, painting it as manipulative rather than authentic? She had seen how he thrived on disruption, a true foil to her aspirations. The clock ticked down, tension building towards the deadline of a presentation that felt heavier with each passing minute. She knew that confronting Carter meant confronting her own vulnerabilities as well. Could she wield the vulnerability of her family narrative without handing him ammunition to disarm her? With each word she typed, uncertainty began to morph into strategy. Carter was a formidable opponent, but Jessica realized that her authenticity and the impacts their technology had on real lives could not be dismissed. Her voice was a crucial element, the human experience mattered. As the evening stretched on, shadows encroached, deepening her resolve. It was time for confrontation not just with her rival but also within herself. She had to embrace the aspects that scared her most, her journey as a single mother and how it intertwined with her professional identity. When a final message popped up on her screen from Kevin, urging them to meet for a last-minute briefing, adrenaline rushed through Jessica's veins. This was it, this moment would define her path forward. As she stepped into the conference room, the energy in the room crackled with possibility. Would she rise to the occasion or fall victim to her lingering fears? The stakes had never been higher, and soon she would be face-to-face with Carter, engaging in a confrontation that would test the very foundation of her beliefs and aspirations. She inhaled deeply, ready for the challenge ahead, unaware of the twists that would soon unfold. But deep down, a relentless voice stirred within. Could she truly redefine both her narrative and her future in that moment? With a thud, the door clicked shut behind her, sealing her in with the choices bound to reshape her destiny. Would she rise to the challenge or allow doubt to undermine her resolve? The air was thick with anticipation as Jessica looked around the conference room, her colleagues perched on the edge of their seats, the weight of their collective hopes resting on her shoulders. The dim overhead lights created an atmosphere that felt almost ceremonial, but as Jessica's eyes landed on the monitor, a fresh wave of anxiety washed over her. There it was, the lifeblood of their mission, a visual representation of the very product that could change lives. A reminder that each pixel represented someone's story, a narrative anchored in hope and healing. "All right, team, let us begin," she said, straining to infuse confidence into her tone. As she clicked through the presentation, her heart thudded in sync with her quickening pulse. The emotional testimonials rolled in tandem with quantifiable data, each transforming abstract results into solid evidence. As you can see, these families have experienced profound impacts, thanks to our technology. But beneath the surface of her words, doubt lurked, Carter's voice echoing, taunting her. What if he dissected her narrative in front of everyone, rendering her authenticity into mere manipulative tactics? The weight of her fears loomed like a shadow. Kevin leaned forward. "Jessica, if it starts to slip, just remember why we're here. Stick to the facts, let the stories speak for themselves. His encouragement was a lifeline, its warmth momentarily assuaging the chill of self-doubt gnawing at her. With renewed vigor, she pressed on, articulating data that demonstrated how their technology reduced procedural distress by 40%. Families who had benefited from the ultrasound system shared unabashed emotional connections, underscoring the humanity behind their scientific achievements. Yet, the critical moment loomed, a nexus between their story of triumph and the searing scrutiny that awaited. Remember, she stressed, this isn't just about proving our product works, it's about demonstrating that we care. Every decision we make has the potential to save lives. As she spoke, she felt a flicker of the force that had driven her thus far, a fierce commitment to her purpose, a combination of her professional ambition and her desire to foster a compassionate approach to healthcare. But just as confidence surged, the conference room door creaked open, allowing a familiar figure to stride in. Carter. He wore a smooth smile, the very veneer of congeniality belied an undercurrent of competition, a predator entering the den. Jessica's throat clenched, the moment of confrontation had arrived. Carter stood up, his presence commanding attention. "Hey everyone, I hope you're ready to witness the truth behind the curtain." His voice dripped with confidence. "Have you all considered the metrics of marketing versus measurable outcomes? Put simply, emotional stories can't always translate into factual data." Jessica felt the color drain from her cheeks. His tactic was bold, a challenge to her very foundation. She clenched her fists under the table, fighting to maintain composure, all while wondering how deeply he had dissected her narrative. "With respect, Carter, our emotional connections act as a conduit for understanding the data in a more human context," she countered, grounding herself. "It's not about manipulation, it's authenticity." Carter smirked, his eyes glinting with the thrill of the game. "Is it, though? Or is it a distraction from what matters most, the clinical robustness of the product?" The exchange ignited a fire within Jessica, forcing a pivotal realization. This was no longer just about a presentation, it was about asserting her identity. She knew her vulnerability and authenticity were weapons against him, not weaknesses. Suddenly, she recalled a recent anecdote shared by one of the families, a father expressing gratitude for how her product had postponed despair in his child's treatment plan. With this story simmering in her mind, Jessica shifted gears, focusing her energy inward. She could speak freely now, unfettered by fear. "My narrative is our strength. Each testimonial reflects a real family, a journey intertwined with our technology, revealing its essence in human terms. There's no apathy here, there's safety and connection." The room's tension fluctuated palpably as Carter's expression faltered, surprise flashing momentarily across his features. She had turned the table, her narrative given weight with conviction. But could one moment truly tip the balance? As she locked eyes with Carter, she sensed the final showdown, an entanglement of values, truth, and instinct. The atmosphere crackled, leaving her on the precipice of either remarkable growth or descending into doubt. Would she be able to carry her momentum into the next round? As they prepared to dive deeper into the metrics and specifics, Jessica felt the tremors of both fear and ferocity swirl within her. The real battle was just beginning, and she needed to hold on to the realization that her most authentic self could prevail against an onslaught. With one last glance at Carter, she steadied her breathing, ready to embrace whatever came next, not only for the presentation but for herself. What revelations about her capabilities awaited her still? The tension in the room shifted as the debate evolved, and Jessica felt like a tightrope walker during a storm. The genuine passion she had ignited began to flicker against Carter's calculated interruptions. The stakes weren't solely her career but her identity, the essence of what she stood for. It was in this newfound clarity that she realized she could no longer afford to be defensive. She had to be bold, to broaden her narrative. As Carter presented his arguments, occasionally throwing out numbers that echoed like sharp knives, Jessica's mind raced. She rifled through her thoughts, refusing to let his strategy undermine her newfound resolve. With conviction standing at the forefront, she decided to redirect the energy of the conversation. She would not only defend her position but seize the moment to illuminate the potential of their work. "Carter," she interjected firmly, rejecting the instinct to dwell in the corner of doubt. "You're right about metrics being important, but consider this: every data point has a pulse. Our stories drive our data and drum up support in ways numbers alone cannot. They embody the impact of our technology. One father can talk about the night he thought he'd lose his child to tumors, and then he holds an ultrasound image that shows hope. What does that statistic truly capture?" Her heart raced, breath quickening as she articulated her thoughts. Armed with her commitment to purpose, she embraced the rawness of her self-expression. This wasn't simply a battle of wits, but an exploration of empathy within their field. Carter's expression shifted, surprise melted into a momentary uncertainty. That flicker fortified Jessica's spirit. Silence enveloped the room as she internalized this potential shift in momentum, but she could not retreat. She pressed on. "The stories are more than emotional hooks, they create a community of trust and understanding, which is invaluable in healthcare. I can share these figures with you until I'm blue in the face, but ultimately it's the narratives that resonate and create change." Each word she spoke solidified her position. She could actually feel her confidence rising like the tide, her voice steady and unwavering. Sensing the shift in the room, Jessica's colleagues exchanged glances filled with the implication that the balance was tipping. Carter's bravado flickered momentarily, and the din of the conference transformed into an arena where Jessica's authenticity thrived. Her challenge was to harness that and convert it into a meaningful conclusion. Just then, the conference room door swung open again. An unexpected arrival walked in, a parent whose child had benefited from their technology. The sight drew a collective intake of breath, an unexpected twist to their unfolding narrative. Jessica's heart leapt with electrifying recognition. Here was living proof of what she had been advocating for: real impact, real lives transformed. "Sorry to interrupt," the father said, his voice warm but laden with emotion, "but I wanted to share how much your product meant to us. That ultrasound, for us, was more than just a picture, it was a lifeline. It changed our entire outlook on treatment." Jessica's pulse thundered in her ears, the raw sincerity of the moment washing over her. This was the very essence she had fought to articulate, the heart of their mission washing against the wall of skepticism. As she locked eyes with Carter, she welcomed the battlefield of perspectives, knowing she now had a powerful ally, a real voice against his calculated metrics. But what lay ahead? The meeting was far from over, and she felt the distinct weight of expectations upon her once again. Could this moment of clarity grant the momentum she needed to finish what she had started? Faced with renewed purpose, she realized that the path ahead was fraught with potential challenges that would demand every ounce of her resilience and ingenuity as she sought to captivate hearts and minds. The glare of Carter's competitive gaze could not undo the momentum she had gathered. Jessica took a deep breath. Realizing this was not just about defending her narrative, it was about crafting her legacy. Would she lean into this moment or fold under pressure? The next step became a critical decision point, the lines clear between merely existing in her role and truly stepping into her power. As the father began to speak further, Jessica's thoughts raced. What other unknown strengths would she discover, and could she sustain this winning stride into the next round of the presentation? The father's heartfelt recounting echoed through the conference room like a beacon, reducing the tension from a boiling simmer to a thoughtful pause. Jessica locked onto his words, each syllable amplifying her own resolve. This wasn't just about data, statistics, and professional competition. It was about the very lives impacted, a tapestry of emotion woven firmly into their technological advancements. As his gratitude poured forth, Jessica witnessed the faces of her colleagues shift, eyes widening with empathy and understanding. They transformed from mere participants in a presentation to advocates for a cause greater than any single project. They became part of a movement rooted in hope. "Thank you for sharing that," Jessica said, her voice anchored in purpose. "These stories are not merely anecdotes, they serve as the foundation of our mission. What we do here matters, not just in theoretical scopes but in responses that ripple through communities. That's the power we harness. Carter's brow furrowed further, his carefully constructed defenses beginning to show cracks. But, Jessica, can we really rely on emotional testimonials when we have complex competitors utilizing superior technology? Her heart surged with confidence as she leaned into the moment. Carter, imagine each family who walks through our doors. They are not just data points, they are people with hopes and fears. Our approach is not one-dimensional. Technical superiority must carry the weight of human compassion. The integration of both isn't just an advantage, it's essential. He opened his mouth but faltered, perhaps he'd anticipated an argument based solely on emotionality, but she wasn't about to let him reduce their mission to that. Her team stood behind her, energy humming in solidarity as they absorbed the impact of the father's story. You see, she continued, emboldened by what she had witnessed. It's not about contrasting emotional versus technical narratives. It's about blending them, creating a cohesive voice that elevates our message and redefines industry expectations. That's what will set us apart, driving success beyond mere metrics. At that moment, the air shifted again, and her confidence felt fortified by the validation reflected back from her colleagues. The influencer of change resided not just in the technology, it lived within the very essence of her self-belief, in their collective ingenuity and compassion. What they were doing mattered, and she committed to ensuring they would present that truth to the world. Just then, Jordan chimed in, Carter, I think Jessica's right. We can't overlook how families will advocate for us. Their need for accurate, reliable technology supports our cause. We should also showcase our product's efficacy alongside their stories. With a flicker of realization, Jessica saw a chance. The tide had turned. It was no longer about avoiding Carter's scrutiny but about reshaping the entire direction of their mission. She ignited her team's collective wisdom and passion, calling on them to lay the groundwork for uniting emotional depth with clinical prowess. Together, they would cultivate a narrative powered by truth and built on solid foundations. The father nodded vigorously, let me help, please. I can gather testimonials from the families we met during treatment. Their stories could serve as real evidence of our product's impact. Perfect, said Jessica, adrenaline coursing through her veins. This was the collaboration she needed. Let us bring it back to the families, the lifeblood of our work. As the conference room buzzed with renewed energy, Carter shifted uncomfortably in his seat, sensing a change in the tide that would challenge conventional perceptions. Jessica maintained her focus. It was the moment to solidify not just her vision but the essential collaboration it required. Let us break down the metrics, she proposed, but let us also infuse the emotional narratives that will resonate with families and healthcare providers alike. We are not isolated in competition, we're part of a larger discussion surrounding care and compassion. As she coordinated the plan, Jessica felt the sharp clarity of purpose sharpen further. Clutching the weight of hope in her hands, she leaned into the vulnerabilities of her journey. This was all part of her narrative, a single mother transformed into a catalyst for change, unwilling to let fear define her. Eventually, they reviewed their work, each person drawing upon the emotional threads they had pulled together amid Carter's bravado, now challenged by authenticity. With each detail, they reshaped the narrative into one that truly represented who they were and what they aimed to accomplish. When the meeting drew to a close, Jessica found herself reflecting on her journey from uncertainty to resolution. Her sense of identity was no longer muddled by fear. She had tangible outcomes, defined roles, a united voice, and a network of families backing their vision. She had found a way to integrate her past struggles into a powerful narrative about resilience and purpose. As they prepared for the second phase of the presentation, she felt her heart quickening in rhythm with renewed confidence. Whatever challenges awaited her now paled into insignificance compared to what she had overcome. This newfound assurance resonated with her colleagues, weaving a sense of purpose into their collective mission. And as she glanced back at the door, she understood now, the journey would twist further into a landscape filled with examples of growth, turning moments of adversity into pathways for discovery. This wasn't the end, it was just the beginning of a bold narrative she was ready to champion alongside her team. Within moments, she would face Carter again, but it would be on her terms. She wasn't just fighting for a project anymore, she was claiming her place as a transformative leader, ready to prove that their work could change lives, standing firm under pressure. With optimism ignited and purpose defined, she could finally meet the high expectations she had set for herself. As she exited the conference room, she felt truly alive, and that sense of conviction eclipsed all doubt. She was ready, and this was her moment to shine. Now, it's your turn to embrace change. If you resonate with Jessica's journey, you need to subscribe now to our channel for more stories of personal triumph that inspire and empower. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us reach even more people who crave motivation. Comment below with your reactions and theories about Jessica's incredible journey. And don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformative conclusion. Let us keep the momentum going and support each other in our paths to greatness.